Anime and manga is one of those mediums that doesn't really seem to transfer very well to live action cinema. Japan have done it successfully with a few products, but the majority are mere subpar imitations of the original, even more so in the West. The track record for American remakes of Japanese anime and manga is horrific. Something about the medium is deeply rooted in Japanese sensibilities, meaning it is often hard for it to successfully translate into a different national cinema. And with the new Cowboy Bebop adaptation on the way, I thought it would be an interesting time to take a look at some adaptations, but specifically the ones from Hong Kong. Hi, my name is Rob and welcome to my channel where we discuss the wonders of East Asian cinema. Today, the anime adaptations of Hong Kong. In my video about the films of Godfrey Ho, I made the point that Hong Kong cinema in the 90s was not all John Woo-esque, slick action cinema. It was a period of saturation where the mere magnitude of content being made meant that filmmakers had to do anything to stand out from the crowd. It's of no surprise here that you find a bunch of anime adaptations being made in Hong Kong. The Dragon from Russia and Killer's Romance are both adaptations of Crying Freeman, the adaptation of Riki-Oh, the Wicked City adaptation, and of course the City Hunter adaptation, along with many others. It's hard to know why so many were specifically made in the 90s, as not much information exists about these films as a collective body of work. Adaptations have been made in Hong Kong past the 90s, like the initial D movie, but the point here is that they seemed a little more in vogue during the early 90s. On the one hand, the obvious answer seems to be that it was a good way to package a Hong Kong film to an international market. Anime was becoming a pretty big medium at the time, and many anime products had begun to garner international appeal. So maybe Hong Kong thought that some adaptations of these products could help them sell their films overseas. Take City Hunter for example. Here you have Jackie Chan in his prime, who was a huge star for Hong Kong, being used in an adaptation of a Japanese franchise. It's a surefire way to access the Japanese box office. Like I previously mentioned, the box office competition was highly competitive at the time, so any way to boost international sales would have helped. It was a good unique selling point over other Hong Kong films. The film is an okay adaptation, it captures the fun spirit of City Hunter and its James Bond parody humour. It panders to pop culture of the time with its random Street Fighter sequence, which would also appeal to the Japanese market, but overall it's a fairly alright adaptation. The film was pretty successful in Japan and Hong Kong, so obviously this strategy seemed to work. Jackie Chan at the time was becoming an international star as well. For Hong Kong, he seemed to be the next Bruce Lee. Obviously not the same in performance, but he was a marketable star overseas, just as Lee was. The other adaptations didn't have this. They used lesser known stars and less of a budget, so City Hunter kinda stands alone as an enigma of the time. This is where I think you find the second reason for these films. Some of them are just good concepts. For example, Wicked City is a bizarre, twisted tale of demons and magic with body horror, action, sex and violence. It's Hong Kong exploitation at its finest. Wicked City already had a pretty good anime film in Japan, so the live action anime adaptation was slightly unnecessary, but it would have tapped into a pre-existing audience. But I think the real benefit of this product is that it lent itself to allowing filmmakers to make a film that would have stood out from the crowd. It was such a unique concept. Sure, the name would have helped bring in some recognition, but the actual plot and concept would have helped them make a unique film, and it did. If you watch Wicked City separate from the anime and just watch it for what it is, it's a crazy film that really tries to go all the way with a lot of the imagery despite lacking the special effects to even pull some of them off. The result is one hell of a film that really gives you a lot for the price of a ticket. This is similar with Riki-Oh, which is easily the best out of these adaptations. This film is one of the famous Category 3 films of the era, and rightfully so. It relishes in violence and gore, just as the original material did. It plays out pretty close to the source material as well, so it would have pleased audiences that would have been watching it for what it was adapting. But it also just personifies so many of the great aspects of Hong Kong cinema. It's the perfect material for an adaptation. The plot is about a kung fu warrior with superhuman strength that ends up in prison as he fights the evil warden for the freedom of the prisoners in an era where prisons are privatised. It's over the top gory fun, and it's well worth a watch to see how an anime adaptation should be handled. Overall, these films feel the product of a period where filmmakers had to do anything to stand out. Films like The Avenging Fist and Future Cops, which were unofficial adaptations of Tekken and Street Fighter, also show how this trend often played out. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these adaptations of manga and anime were also unofficial. What I love though is seeing how these adaptations differ to Western adaptations and Japanese adaptations. And honestly, I think the Hong Kong ones actually turn out pretty good. They take enough of the source material and have enough of a separation from the source to be able to add liberties to the plot so that it works better for a film. Western adaptations often just change way too much, and Japanese adaptations often try too hard just to replicate the original. These Hong Kong versions get the balance just right. Yeah, they're not all great and they're not all perfect films, but I think it's an interesting body of work from an interesting period of Hong Kong cinema that often gets ignored. So I recommend checking some of these out, and definitely tell me what you think about these and why you also think Hong Kong maybe made so many of these adaptations during the 90s. If you enjoy what I do here guys, then follow any of the links below to follow me on other things and support the channel in any way you can. And please like, comment, subscribe and do all those lovely things that you always do, and I will see you guys next time.